the 200 hour, and we've done bunches of 500s, and we've started a new 10-week 50-hour yoga teacher refresh.
I love it.
Especially the last few years, people have gotten out of their rhythm of teaching or being in person.
Even practicing.
And
right,
practicing,
right.
And
oh, my goodness. I love that.
Prenatal. We've got some other stuff in the works going to roll out. And so it's really, as a school, we have just been, just firing on all cylinders because of all these amazing experienced teachers that, and,
love it.
I mean, Carol could have her, her Ashtanga class is like a school that's its own little shala, where she's so amazing at training Ashtangis and creating community and sharing philosophy from the Ashtanga lens. So back to how Y12 has grown. I mean, I'm perusing your website and looking at all the different programs that have come to fruition, a mix of online. So you're getting out in person, so a little bit more,
Yeah, finally.
And I was really curious about the healing addiction, Sean Korn and Gary Krapsow, who you always spoke of him as one of your first teachers.
Yep.
What happens there?
That was a bucket list thing. That was really a bucket list thing. So I did this filming with Yoga International. And I said, I really, really want to ask. Both of those are two very, very influential teachers in my sphere. Sean has been my mentor, teacher, best friend. We, for more than a decade now, right? She was really influential in, when I was when the monkeys were going in the mind about starting Y12SR, and did I really want to do that? And then the monkeys.
Yeah.
Right. She was the one that chilled the monkeys, right? For me, help me to chill out the monkeys and just go forward and do this. Yeah. And so she's been a really, really influential, just being in my sphere for so very long. And Gary is where I did a depth of teaching, teacher training. I did Gary's 200, 500. No, I did Gary's 500 and 8, and yoga therapy, right? So I went through the Vini yoga training for yoga therapy. And it's such a rich depth. It's the Vini yoga tradition, right? And he was taught directly by TKV Desikachar. That was his teacher, who of course is Krishnamacharya's son, right? And so I've always been so deeply honored, to have received the teachings that close, from the Krishnamacharya lineage. And so I asked him, right? I don't know. I just asked him. I said, I'm working on this thing called Healing Addiction, a Yogic Perspective. Right. And I asked my two most influential teachers to do it with me, and both of them said yes. And I'm just so honored and so grateful.
Well,
right?
I will post that. When is that?
It's a recording.
Okay.
There's the other thing that is coming up that is really interesting. We're doing with the International Association of Yoga Therapists, so IAYT, and Eat, Breathe, Thrive, and Give Back Yoga. In September, which is Recovery Month, we are doing an online virtual thing that's called Yoga and Recovery, Healing Addiction and Eating Disorders.
Oh, I saw that,
Yeah. It's the last, I want to say the 23rd through the 25th. Of September, and we're bringing in just for anyone, right? And I don't know how you not be when in this country right now, there's an opioid death every 5 minutes. Every freaking something's wrong with this picture, right? And it's not something that pharmacology or the AMA or government or any of that kind of stuff alone can solve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this grassroots stuff that you know and that we do, right, can have a very, 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 I would assert, input into healing this thing at a deep level.
Yeah.
And so we're gathering a bunch of international folks from all threads, from policy. We're going to look at policy. We're going to look at healthcare and pharmaceutical. We're looking at it all.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
How can we create a platform for healing? Right. Plus grassroots stuff. So I'm really excited about that. I think that there's, particularly for yoga teachers and yoga therapists and those who are interested in working this thing, you know, from this bigger lens.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. I think this thing is going to offer some insight into that.
That sounds pretty powerful. And I think about, you know, people like yourself and people like my son. You know, I lost a son to addiction, for some of you that may not know out there, through an overdose. And his mother, Justin, she created Overdose Lifeline.
Yes.
And I was just looking at some of their reports on what they've been doing the last 7 years. And it's about education and awareness. Initially, it was about getting Narcan and naloxone out.
Yeah.
And they leveraged to pass the law to make it legal in Indiana for first responders and families, lay people, to have the overdose drug.
Amazing that it was not.
Yeah, I know. Well, it needed somebody to stand and speak up, and they called it Aaron's Law, and they, you know, saved countless lives doing that. But what they started an education program into schools called "This Is Not About Drugs," and it's they're doing a second iteration of it, but they've gone national, and they've just, through their education efforts, have reached hundreds of thousands of kids.
I love it. And I love the preventative nature to this.
And she's pretty tuned in with policy too. I mean, she's very aware. We should connect you two sometime.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, soon, because I would love to ask her to be a part of this thing that we're doing in September. Yeah. I would love to. I think that's just the kind of information that I would love to get out to this broader audience.
Yeah. And I'm going to a ribbon cutting, amongst other things they're doing, for a women's halfway house, right in South Broad Ripple area.
South Broad Ripple?
Yeah. It was the old Indy Hostel building. It's, I forget, it's not... I'll connect you with that, but I
love it.
Yeah, so that's cool. You know, they're just doing a lot of work, and there's a Camp Mariposa, which is a camp for children that have been affected by addiction.
Yes.
Whether they lost a parent or sibling, and they have a monthly program. Every other month is a overnight weekend. And so it's normalizing their life, bringing normalcy back into this life that's been shattered by addiction.
Yep.
And they, that's, it's called Aaron's Camp Mariposa. And so it's, a lot of just amazing energy and effort has been put out. We've had, done some yoga stuff with them.
I was going to say, and especially that the halfway house.
Brandon Tryman teaches it.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
He's a Cityoga graduate and
trained
in Y12SR.
I love it. But I would love to get information about the halfway house.
Okay.
I would love to support Y12SR in there. We found through some work we're doing that is a very supportive kind of thing in those kinds of environments. Mm-hmm. In that whole context is set up there. So, yeah. I want to be connected.
Okay, definitely. We will do that. And we circle back a little bit. You said you did some filming with Yoga International.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah,
What was that all
I've done quite a bit of filming with Yoga International, actually. Yeah. So the other thing that I did with Yoga International that I love was called some yoga schools around the country are using this piece as input for the ethics requirement in 200-hour programs. It's called the Yoga of Ethics. Okay. And so it goes deep into, number one, what ethics is and why it's important in this context and all of that. But the other piece that I love that I added into that is this whole thing, particularly in yoga teachers and any really helping profession, the danger of crossing the fine line from compassionate to codependent. Yeah. Right. And so there's a lot in there about how to recognize when I'm crossing the line. I did this other piece. It's a part of the Y12SR curriculum that asked the question, are you compassionate or are you codependent? Mm-hmm. The wisdom to know the difference, right? That there's a fine line, right, between compassionate and codependent. And it's one that's easily, one is easily crossed, really, with any helping profession. Yeah. So in this piece, we delve into that, right? And we look at that pretty deeply because we end up, when we cross that threshold and we move into codependent, we can cause more harm, right? And so the first number one yama is ahimsa, right? Himsa means violence. Put the A in front of it, it means non or not, right? And so we can cross that line pretty easily, particularly when we get into this whole codependent aspect of things. So that one's I love.
Yeah,
I really love that one.
We'll have to dig in and maybe do guest teach some stuff here. Yeah. I mean, once again.
Yeah, I'd love to. It's a good. That one's a hard one. And then I did the intensive is online with Yoga International. Okay. And so so just done a ton of work. And then there's some stuff as well on our girl, Keno McGregor's network.
Oh, yeah. Home Stars. I saw that. I saw
Stars.
Like Home Stars. I'm like, oh, you hooked up with Keno. That's awesome. Yeah.
Keno and I have known each other for a minute, right? She came to Y12SR, to City Yoga. Right. Yeah. And that's where we first met. And she, the first time I think she was here, she stayed with me and we formed a relationship. And then I've been at her school and taught. And so, so it was great.
Well, you introduced me to her right around, I think, the year I took over the studio. Yeah. And so we'd become good friends.
Keno's a real deal.
She's just, she is like an amazing
she's a real deal. Yeah.
And Tim Feldman, he's, I did some work with him.
I never met Tim. Every time it seemed like I was in Miami or she was here, Tim was traveling or Tim was away. So we've never met face to face, but
he's a really cool guy. He's coming next year, as a matter of fact, first time here. And I really kind of got to know him a little bit. I did a couple of his, during lockdown, he was doing these 1 week, like Mysore intensives. Oh, yeah. So Mysore every morning, then a little Yoga Sutra study and kind of discussion.
Oh, man.
So I was like, and actually I did a podcast with him. If you look through our archives, which
I love it,
linked to the Cityoga page. But he's just a neat guy. He's had depth of training and that lineage and finding his lens through a deep study of sutras and Ashtanga. So you got the film. Okay. One thought that kind of came up was and you mentioned trauma, and I think it was Dr. Gabor Mate made the comment. It's like, I don't know if he said 100% or 99% of all people struggling with addiction have some trauma in their background.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, and I like believe that. And then I worked with, doing some traumatic grief and bereavement trainings and study and my own